Okay, well, welcome to our first Wash and Women Forum. We're really excited to have Dr. Beatrice Chisenga with us to present a little bit about our eWash Club. If you're not familiar, our eWash Club is a Rotary club that is an e-club, so anyone, anywhere in the world can join. And we look at specific topics within WASH, and we're hoping to be kind of a leading club in expertise in different WASH areas, and that's water and sanitation hygiene. And so that's kind of what our Rotary Club is aiming towards. And then this forum is going to be kind of a collaboration between different Rotary clubs, WASH experts, and we're hoping to provide an avenue in which people who are interested in specific WASH topics regarding water and women and gender can tune in and get gather information, collaborate with other WASH experts. It's just going to be a really great forum for people to get together and collaborate. Dr. Beatrice Chisenga is another wonderful expert in WASH. She received her doctorate in project management, which was focused on hand pump maintenance. And she'll tell you, I'm sure, more about her background and things of that sort. But at the present moment, she's working as the African Field Director for Design Outreach, which is a nonprofit engineering organization. And they specialize in innovating ultra deep hand pumps, if I understand that correctly. She is also the founder and CEO of a consulting firm called Pro Rule Solutions, which provides other NGOs in expertise in grant writing, project management, research, and partner development. So let's welcome Dr. Beatrice Chisenga.
Oh, thank you very much, Jessica. It's a great privilege for me to present to the eWash Club about how to design a gender-sensitive rural hand pump project. I've been brought up in a rural area, in the rural areas of Malawi, which is one of the poor countries in Southern Africa. I've lived in a rural area. I've seen the challenges of collecting water as a girl child. So I'm going to talk about lived experiences in relation to how we can design projects which can be sensitive in terms of accommodating gender issues. In designing gender-sensitive WASH projects, the background of it is that it is well enshrined in the legislation, the policies, particularly the legal issues at international level. A gender perspective is the process of assessing implications for women and men for the planned WASH project. In this case, we are talking about a hand pump project. In case some of you may not be aware of what a hand pump project is all about, I've just put one of the examples of hand pump projects which are used across Africa. And this is called an AfriDef pump. You might be wondering why I have called it designing a rural gender-sensitive hand pump project. My main focus is the rural and not the urban. There could be some hand pumps which are installed in the urban areas, but maybe the approach to managing them might be completely different from the way, from the ones which are managed in the rural area. And I know there is a difference when we talk of rural in the West and rural in Africa. It's totally different. A rural person, for example, a rural woman in Africa is a woman who is marginalized, who is also lacking basic education. In general, may not be able to read and write the local language. And she's also not having basic needs, for example, water. And also she's depending on communal assets It could be a school, it could be the water, or it could be other resources. And he is living below the poverty line and is also governed by the local leaders. When I say the poverty line here, I'm talking about women who are living on less than $1 per day, according to World Bank classification of poverty. And these women generally, or these people in the rural areas, generally, they do not make decisions independently. Instead, they depend on the local leaders, who could be the village headman, or could be group headman, or could be somebody in authority who has to make decisions on their behalf. And I've just given a slide there showing what a rural place is like. Women can walk across a lot of kilometers to collect the water. As I said earlier on, there are some international instruments which are governing why we must be gender sensitive in designing WASH projects, particularly including the hand projects. For example, there are some legal binding instruments as well as non-legal binding instruments. I can just give a few examples there, which are of the key ones. For example, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is focusing on improving the quality of the people, particularly reducing in terms of oppression and in terms of improving the quality of the people as such, and also the Beijing Protocol for Action, which particularly focused about the women, that the women should be taken on board when it comes to development. Otherwise, if women are left behind, there could be no development really, because in the rural areas, if women are not developed, there is no development actually. There is also the Universal Declaration on Elimination of All Forms of Violence against Women. And in addition to that, there is also the Sustainable Development Goal 6, which focuses on water as such, and is also stating that by the year 2030, we must have equitable access to water for all the people, particularly with women's participation. And also the SDG 5 is focusing on gender equality, that gender equality should be improved by the year 2030. So with this background, gives us varied reasons why we need to focus on projects which must be gender sensitive. And in this context, the hand pump projects. There is also evidence of gender inequality in relation to water out there. In the first place, there is empirical evidence showing that women collect water up to 5 hours a day and can walk up to 5 to 15 kilometers in a day. And that 90% of the water is collected by the women. And the women bear the most water burdens, and it takes a greater stake than the men. Particularly here, I'm focusing about the sub-Saharan Africa as such. And also that there is the issue of power and relations, and that the men take the upper hand in controlling of the women, such that the women have low decision making. There are also cultural and religious reasons which are hindering the women to be effectively benefit in terms of the water issues, in terms of equality. I can briefly talk about the examples which I had come across when I was young. I remember very well when I was a teenager, one of the issues we are instructed was that once you have started the menses, you cannot just use the washrooms which your parents are using. You have to go and wash yourself, you know, where we used to collect the water, whether it was an open source or whether it was a hand pump. So the girls, so there are some cultural barriers for the girls particularly and the women. There are also cultural barriers relating to religious issues as well. For example, I know of a place, a Muslim-oriented place in my country, whereby a hand pump was abandoned just because it was situated very close to the mosque. And the women in that area did not like it, so that they were encountering the men, so they couldn't, maybe have adequate space for themselves. As a result, it was only found that it was the children who was using the hand pump, and the women had abandoned using the hand pump. And after it was investigated, they found that the reason was because it was put near to the mosque, which was not appropriate for them culturally. So there are also some cultural and religious reasons as well, which can cause some gender inequality relating to water and even the hand pump as such. And also the women's voice is rarely heard due to the power dynamics. The men are the ones who are taking control of decision making. Just of most of the cultures are they are men dominant, whereby there is a patriarchal system. So because of that, the women who are they are not contributing to the decision making about how the hand pumps can run effectively. The other issue is about and because of such problems, whereby the women may not have an equal access to potable water, they resort to using sources, open surface water. As we can see in the slide there, the same place where they will wash the clothes is the same place where they will get the drinking water. This is reality. You might think that it's, maybe it was happening 50 years ago. It's not. I've been in the same circumstances as well. I remember we used to go to a dam and we could wash our clothes there. Then we could go deeper and collect, and we were assuming the water which was deeper than that water was cleaner, but it was not so, just because there was no hand pump which was nearby. So the women, there is a sort of a gender inequality whereby the women access water which is infected. And also water access is also part of the broader gender-based violence, and also relating to protection and right of water and health as such. The link to gender-based violence with water, in particular here about the hand pump, I can explain my own scenario of the experiences which I had had while I was living in the village, while I was a girl child. I remember very well how sometimes a woman could be caught by a crocodile just because she has gone to get water very early in the morning. And sometimes the girls, or women could be struck by the snake just because maybe it was a very bushy area where they were passing to collect the water. And sometimes there were instances of rape as well. Many places they knew that the women, the only place where you will find a woman going out is when she goes to collect the water. So the men could also target that time as well. So there is some form of a broader gender-based violence, which is relating to access to water as well. So the issues of protection and right to water and right to health are also coming about. I've just given a few examples here about the violence which can occur due to water and also hand pump water supply. As I said earlier on, that there were instances of my fellow girl who got pregnant because she was raped, because she had gone to collect the water. And this was not just a one-off example. We could hear rumors of such and such a thing had happened when the girl was going to collect water. So there is a form of violence which can occur as well in relation to hand pump water supply. Why should we use a gendered approach in this context? A gendered approach is important because it can help us to develop a framework of cooperation for men and women. In other words, all the sexes to be involved in the management of a hand pump to provide water to the communities. And a gendered approach can also promote women as decision makers. When women become decision makers, it will improve their ability to contribute in maintenance of the hand pump. And also the women and the girls as water collectors, in the long run, they are the ones who benefit most. And the inequalities can also be addressed once we use this approach of a gendered approach. if we don't use the gendered approach, one of the outcomes could be women using unprotected spraying. And as we can see, from women can use bad water as bad as it can be seen in that picture. I remember when I was young, there was a borehole near to our village where my father used to teach. And then the borehole had broken down, and the only option we had was to go and get water from an open source. And we had used water like that. As much as we could boil the water, but there were instances where the water was still, was still was still contaminated, and the incidences of diarrhea and cholera were very common. I remember to have been struck by dysentery at one time in my life, and I almost lost my life. I remember myself and my brother where there was an outbreak of cholera and dysentery in that area in 1978, and in my family was not spared at all. And I was one of the people who had to face such consequences as well. So if there is no clean water supply, the only option is that the women will use unprotected springs. The other background is the policy arena. There is policy now at international level, right from the United Nations, from World Bank, who has been the main funder for the hand pump projects, that they should focus on the issues of decentralization. The important thing about decentralization is that it will allow the stakeholders or the end users to take part in the maintenance or in the management of a hand pump in terms of operations and maintenance, and also in terms of contributions for minor maintenance. And also the other policy focuses on local good governance for the community to be able to contribute funds for minor maintenance of the hand pump. There's need for the village headmen and also the local leaders to be able to cooperate with that and to be able to govern the people so they can be able to make the decisions to help themselves in maintaining of the assets. There's the issue of cost sharing, which has also come on policy arena since the late 90s. World Bank came up with a policy that no hand pump should just be given free to the poor people. There's this policy to say that poor people should contribute to their own development. They should not just expect everything to be given to be donor funded, but they must also contribute, because the principle behind is that if people just get anything free, they don't value it and they will not do anything about it. So even though they are poor, they can still contribute 5 to 10% of the total cost of the asset in kind or in cash. When I say in kind here, it might mean bringing in the sand, molding the bricks for the hand pump, and cutting the trees where the hand pump is going to be installed, and also maintenance, whereby they must contribute some cash, at least in relation to upfront contribution of the maintenance. What we need to know is that normally the hand pumps will be given maybe by the non-government organization or by the government, and that's the end of it. It's the role of the communities to take maintenance of it. And once the communities do not have any cash in the village, they have not mobilized themselves for self-help, it means once it breaks down, that's the end of it. So to avoid that, there is a policy right now in many African countries I can talk about. Before any pump is installed, the government have said that have specified how much money the local people should contribute. Of course, this has been debated. Some people say, why should the poor people who are living on less than $1 per dollar, and then force them to contribute in a certain amount of money? So the households generally, they agree every month maybe to contribute something like maybe maybe $3 per month. For the whole community, you are talking of maybe 500 people contributing that much. So there is that policy which is encouraging it, and also the role of local institutions, which encourages local people to contribute, to participate, including the women. The local institutions here, I mean the local committees, which could be the village development committees, could be the water committees. Each pump is supposed to have a water committee, which would be responsible to look after that hand pump. And this local water committee is supported by the institutional committees like Village Development Committee, Area Development Committee, and District Assembly, which is at district level. And another issue there is the bottom-up approach. As much as possible, the hand pumps are encouraged to operate within a bottom-up approach and not a top-down. Because if it is a top-down, once the ministry decides, oh, this village, they don't have water, let's give them a hand pump, and the villages are not involved, definitely, they will not be involved in maintenance as well. There will be no mechanisms for operations and maintenance. But if the villagers are involved, they are part of the decision making that water is the issue in our village, and we were prioritizing water than a school or a bridge, the chances are very high that they will be able to take part in maintaining the asset. It comes back to square one. Once there is no community participation, we go back to square one where the hand pumps are not working. And it is sad to say that there has been billions of dollars which has been invested, and yet 1/3 of the hand pumps in sub-Saharan Africa have been abandoned and are not working anymore. And there are many reasons for that. One of them is because communities were not involved from the beginning. It was a top-down approach. The other reason is because there has been no spare parts, supply chain, there has been no supply chain for that. Or the other reason could be that it's a capital expense whereby the local people, despite that they have contributed the money, they might contribute, as I said, maybe $5, $10 per month. Maybe that asset might need to be $300, $400. They can not manage to buy it. So there are many reasons why 1/3 of the hand pumps are not working in sub-Saharan Africa. And another reason also is because a gendered approach as well. The women who are the users of the hand pump are not decision makers. The women cannot force the men to contribute the money. It's the men who bring in the money in the house. So the women who are not decision makers do not have much to say about that. And it's the same. We come back to the same problem of using contaminated water from the springs, other than having good, clean water. Now, the question is, how can we come up with a project which should be sustainable, provide continuous supply of water to the women, so that all the vulnerabilities which women experience, they are taken care of. In the first place, lack of clean water is the issue, which should motivate us to come up with a gendered approach to hand pump projects. And also the women are taking the key role in water collection, the women and the girls as well. I will give you a typical example of my own life. I grew up in a family of 5. My mother used to be a primary school teacher. My father had died when I was 13 years old. And it was me and my sister who my mother would wake us up as early as 4:30 in the morning to go about 2 to 3 kilometers away and collect the water. After that, once we come back, we would come back maybe after 2 hours, and then we go to school. So the women and the girls are the key. They take this key role of water collection. While we were 5 of us, the boys were not doing anything. And it used to pain us to say, why should we be the only ones to collect the water? But it was a system, a cultural system. You can't say anything. It was not only our house, it was everybody else. It was the role of the girl child to collect the water. And also the women lack education. These are the women who are using the water, who are collecting the water, and they lack education. As a result, they cannot be able to contribute much when it comes to even the community meeting, because they cannot write, and maybe they may not be able, most of them are not able to read and write the local language. and that makes them to be not to compete with the men, because in general about the men education is much better than the women in the rural areas. There's also reduced decision making, which I have already commented about. In the first place, if there's a community gathering, it is in many cultures it is unnatural for women to speak. The village headman has to speak, even if the women have ideas. They may not be able to aerate the ideas. The village headman or the men have a final say. And yet here we are talking about the assets which the men don't use at all. They don't appreciate it, they don't understand. So the thing is that is also contributing. This is another problem, which why we must come up with a gendered approach. And also the cultural issues which I talked about, that there are some cultural issues which are also a problem, which are hindering the women or making the women to be vulnerable. I already talked about the culture whereby once you start the menstrual messes, for example, in my own culture, those days we are told, I remember I was locked for 1 month in a house, the women giving me all sorts of rules, how I should behave myself, how I should conduct myself. And one of the areas was that once you have the menses, you cannot use the same shower room where your father and mother is using. You have to go to the river or to the hand pump and clean yourself there. So we made sure early in the morning you go there, and early at night, and late in the evening you go again. In the dark, you make sure you wash yourself and you come back again in the morning. So there are all sorts of cultural reasons as well, which has to be addressed so as to meet the gendered approach to hand pump management. I've briefly put down there a model which, in general, which fits in what we are doing in the first place. We want clean water, which is by hand pump technology. And this clean water cannot be provided unless there is financial aid, which is by the non-governmental organizations, and the communities, including the women who are end users, have to provide the labor in terms of the sand, the quarry, the bricks, and the stones. And at the same time, unless there is a decentralized approach whereby the communities have a system to organize themselves and include the women, so that these women are also empowered. Our overall aim is to empower the women and also to reduce donor dependency, so that these pumps are managed by the communities themselves, and the women taking a lead as well. In the overall run, we aim at reducing the waterborne diseases and improve the health of the children and the mothers and the general population. This model is also focusing on what Chambers calls inclusive rural development. Probably I could briefly explain there that when we talk about rural development, we are talking about development in terms of basic assets. When maybe here in the West we talk about development, maybe we talk in terms of monetary issues, how much money people are getting. It's not so in developing countries, especially in sub-Saharan Africa. We are in development is about how much assets the communities are having for economic development, as well as political development and social development. Economic development in this place will be in terms of the capacity and opportunities to participate in the benefit for the growth of the community. And for economic development to be there, the women have to be part and parcel of it. We have a slogan which we say in our country: if you want to develop a nation, you have to develop a woman. If women are not developed, they can't be development. And a hand pump or water supply is one of the main development for the rural people in the communities. When you ask the poor people in the village, what do you want? What is your pressing need in this village? If you tell them to rank, maybe using stones or using sand, okay, can you rank to us if there's a school, there's a clinic, there's water, there's which one do you rank as the most pressing need for your village? And 99% of the villages will rank water as their key issue for development. So provision of a hand pump, just like any water supply, will lead to the economic development of the users, including the women. Not only that, in terms of political dimension, the women themselves, they have also the opportunity that they can participate in their contribution about the welfare of the hand pumps. So there is also a social development as well in terms of reduction, in terms of disease, waterborne disease on the families, which includes the women and the girls. There are some few insights which we have to, which are derived from literature, and that's about that we need the monetary, just to summarize what I've been saying, there's need for the monetary and material factors to sustain the hand pumps, also the technical factors as well. And this is about the knowledge and skills which is required at village level to facilitate the hand pump operations, which means if we are trying to streamline the gender issues, technical factors, the women have to be part and parcel of providing the technical know-how about how to maintain the assets. There is also the issue of organizational factors, whereby there must be committees, as I said earlier on, and which means the women have to be part and parcel of the local committees at each level, right from the water point committees and the village development committees, area development committees, and even the district assembly as well. So women will need to be part of that so that they can contribute to that. There is also a theoretical model whereby we talk about stakeholder management, that if you want to improve the outcome of any project, the internal stakeholders have the more influence of that project. In other words, in this case, the internal stakeholders are the women themselves. So the women have to be at the center of managing the hand pump project. There is also, we have to think of the direct and indirect target groups as we develop this. And the direct will include the women themselves, the women, the children, the girls, and also the men. And also, when we talk of gender, we are not just focusing about that, but also the vulnerable groups as well. For example, the disabled, the chronically ill people, and sometimes even sex-oriented things, you know, the issue of homosexuals, lesbians are also coming everywhere now. So we also think in that area as well to say, okay, is this asset acceptable for everybody and all sexes? And what about the children as well? Will the children be able to use these assets? And then also, we also focus on the policymakers as well, because the gender issues have to be streamlined right from the policy level to the local government and also to the local committees. One of the ways how we will mainstream gender is about women's role in selection of the site itself. The women have to be part and parcel of selecting where the hand pump is going to be situated. There are instances, many instances, whereby women were not involved, and then the women have resorted to not going to use that hand pump. I just mentioned to you about one instance whereby it was a Muslim culture, and the women, because the pump was situated very close to the mosque, the women felt there was no privacy for them. So as a result, they abandoned their hand pump and they resorted to using the open wells. There must also be gender awareness and sensitization at all levels, right from the communities itself, because in the first place, women have to be given opportunity to make decisions, and there is a culture that men has to make all the decisions. So gender awareness, sensitization is very important at all levels. And also women as part of the pump installation, supervision, monitoring, and evaluation, and also part of fundraising as well for the maintenance. And also training of the staff who are providing the projects is also very important, because sometimes the staff themselves, who are the project sponsors, they don't know how they can integrate gender. And the gender to be part and parcel also of the quarterly meetings which are happening at different levels. The other way also how we can mainstream gender is also by partners coordination, and in this case is the issue of civil society, the role of the NGOs, the donors themselves, and also the role of the ministry themselves, the district councils, and also the community, women's role.
Yes, no problem. So the question, Dr. Chisenga, is how can we be sure to that women are given a lead role? And then if they are given a lead role, is there any basically like a backlash, or is she put into any danger in being in that leading role?
Okay, this is integrating gender is a complex issue, and it has to start from the project design itself. And I think that's where I was coming up to. I will just finish. I'll just get back to my slides and explain a bit more from there. Yeah, the first thing is that gender must be part and parcel of the policies and the strategies, plans, and the budgets of the particular organization. Gender must be well streamlined in their policies, and they must be capacity building to understand about inequalities and vulnerabilities and violence and the responses which have to be there. And also there must be linkage of the hand pump project with the gender-based violence specialists. Many times there may be need for a gender-based violence specialist to come in and advise the particular organization how they can streamline gender into their project. So in addition to that, we can also accommodate by identifying what are the key vulnerabilities that are linked in this context to the hand pump project, and devising responses in all stages of the project. And in this, we have to include the stage of supply chain, which is very, very important, because if there is no supply chain, likely the hand pumps will not go anywhere. And also the operations and maintenance challenges, monitoring and evaluation. On a regular basis, we must develop specific indicators to say, okay, if we are measuring this hand pump, how sustainable it is, how is gender indicators going to be measured. Let's say at quarterly level, reviewing what were our indicators in relation to gender. What has so far been done? What has so far been the challenges? For example, if we had in our initial plan, one of the indicators was that women must be part and parcel of the deliberations at village level. Have women really been part and parcel of the deliberations or the meetings where women actively contributing? That's just one of the reasons. If one of our aims was to displace the cultural myths which are related to women vulnerabilities, if we have done all the education in the communities, then we can evaluate what is the knowledge base. Have the people really improved? Have they understood? I'll give you one example. For example, in one of the places where my mother was working, the hand pump was abandoned because the water was salty. And we literally used to go to the village, Kasito River in Enukweni, and collect water from the river. And the reason the community gave was that, well, because the water is salty. But there was an intensive education to say, well, even if this water is salty, but it doesn't have it's not contaminated. And with the repeated education, using participatory approaches, which people who have not been to school can understand, the communities are able to come up to realize and can be able to change their cultural beliefs. So it takes a lot of employing participatory tools involving the men, the women, the boys, and the girls, and also listening to the voices of the men, of the women and the girls themselves. The other issue is about women empowerment, building self-esteem and self-worth of all, especially the women and the girls. Women as part of the village water point committees, also local mechanics, and also monitoring and evaluation as well. And also linking the women with women groups. For example, the church. Most of the churches are there in sub-Saharan Africa. You know, the women will have a forum of themselves, like the Women Guild. If those women groups are well oriented about the vulnerabilities, about the violences which are happening, and then how these things can be handled, they could be used as good channels to counteract such challenges, so that women in the long run, they can become as agents of change. And also, I think I had already mentioned about this, about women's involvement in all stages. So the issue is improving. We must make sure that there is improvement of user information on the rights on their rights in relation to the right of water, and also in relation to WASH and the gender, and a feedback system as well. Going back and evaluating maybe every quarter or every 6 months, the communities should have a form of a feedback system to evaluate themselves. Where are they up to? Are they getting better in integrating the women and the girls as well? Or is it the same situation? Which means even at community level, they need to have a sort of a baseline data using participatory approaches for which they can use to evaluate themselves regularly. And also a sort of referrals in case of violence as well. As I said earlier on, there was instances whereby people were raped. It was few occasions, but it was there. Sometimes, you know, the way going to a hand pump was just full of long grasses, which were not cut. And you couldn't see any person coming, approaching you. So the issue is, there was issues of violence. Some people get pregnant because of being raped, because they have gone to collect the water. Is there any form of referrals in case of the violence? Are the women aware of this? Are the girls aware of this? Are the village leaders aware of this? So everybody needs to contribute to the welfare of the women, at the same time of the welfare of the hand pump as well. So I don't know whether this answers some of the question which you had. Otherwise, I'll go on to present to say that how we can implement the gender issues in a hand pump project. One of the key issues is the supply chain. I talked briefly about this. Issues of, there must be a connection of the manufacturer and also the role of the ministry in that country, the vendor or the distributors who are selling the spare parts, the end users who are part of the end users are the women themselves. So in terms of the spare parts supply and distribution, because if there is a bottleneck in any of this system, then the chances that the women will not have continued supply of water and they will be vulnerable again. For example, if the Minister of Water has a role to make sure that if the spare parts and or the hand pumps, maybe the tax is waived off at national level, to make sure that communities can manage to buy the spare parts, because normally they are not manufactured locally. Usually the hand pumps which are used right now in Africa are manufactured in India. Later on, our own hand pump, which Design Outreach is manufactured in the United States. You can imagine. So the pump manufacturer, the issue of linkages with the Ministry of Water, their policies, whether they are accepting, to what extent are they accepting in terms of assets which are employed overseas, is also contributing. And also the vendors, how much are they selling the parts? As I said earlier on to you, to say the responsibility of the hand pump is given to the community, handed over, and usually it's the end of the NGOs. All of the NGOs might be there 5 years and they are gone. I know very well in my village, my mother used to say, oh, the hand pump which World Vision came and gave us has broken down. Now we have gone back to get water from the river. This was a common say in my own village. So the NGOs will go. But is there a system that end users, including the women, will have access to maintain their assets. We can also respond to violence, gender, and water through trainings. Training is very important, advising on how to deal with perpetrators as well, and rights of the people. Many times when a girl will complain to say she has been raped, she is the one who is accused instead of accusing the perpetrators, which is very sad, really. They will say, you are the one, you are supposed to be the one to be blamed, you know, and you are literally considered as an outcast. I've known people who have been made pregnant after rape, and then they don't know their husband, and you know, it just becomes as a big problem for that particular girl. So in the training should include part of that, rights of the women, rights of the girls. How should we deal with the perpetrators? It might be very few instances, but we still have to make sure we have a framework in place in case such things happen. And the reporting system as well, once violence has been witnessed because of water, and the issues of protection as well. And another way how we can introduce the strategy of gender in a hand pump project is also constructing hand pumps which can reduce breakdown and non-functionality. I had said earlier on that in many parts of Africa, they are using two types of pumps. One pump is called a shallow well, and the other one is usually a deep well. The shallow one will only go up to 10 meters depth in the ground, and the deeper well might go up to 50. But the incidences of breakdown is just too high. 1/3 of these will not survive. They will break down and they will never be repaired again. So the issue is the quality of the pumps as well. The quality of the pumps is very, very important. For example, now, that's why our organization is coming up with a life pump, which is quite durable, made of stainless steel. And we expect that maintenance costs are also very, very small, such that communities who are very poor should not be overburdened of large maintenance costs, which they cannot manage. So the issue of what assets, what hardware we use is also very important in that. Unless there are some questions, otherwise I had questions myself as well to the group. The first question was, how could the lottery funded WASH projects align gender in the different WASH projects? What could be the role of the Rotary e-clubs? And what could each one of us do to have a gendered tailored in WASH clubs or WASH projects? I think this is the end of my presentation. Otherwise, if there are any questions, I think they are welcome.
Dr. Chisenga, thank you so much. We're very, very honored to have you. We had just a couple of questions from the group chat. One question I'll go back to is, should a family only have sons and their mother perhaps passes away or dies? Are women from other community or other families expected to collect the water for an all-male family? And I think you can give some of your experience perspective from that.
The role of collecting water is for the girls and the women. In very few occasions, you will see a boy collecting water, particularly in the rural areas. So if the mother has no girl child, likely, of course, she will be the one to collect the water, unless if she has medical problems. Because we live in a community, generally in Africa, we live in communities whereby there's a lot of helping each other. There will be some other, extended family members who will take the responsibility to help in water collection. We still have some boys who collect the water, but the whole tradition is usually in the hands of the girls and the women.
Wonderful, thank you. We have one more question, a couple more questions. What, if any, religious or ethnic categories would predict an expansion of female decision-making participation once an NGO succeeds with putting the village women in charge of installing and monitoring a hand pump? So, you know, I think what this is asking basically is if any religious or ethnic, you know, affiliates would predict, you know, how females would be put into lead roles and put into, you know, being in charge of installing and monitoring a hand pump.
Yeah, the thing is, the way hand pump project will be managed all depends with the project sponsor. When I say project sponsor, is the organization which is bringing the project in the community. Usually, 75% of the hand pump projects are brought by the non-governmental organizations, and usually funded based on the principles of World Bank, as I said earlier on, focusing on decentralization, good governance as issues, and gender is also part of it. Actually, I know I know that even most of the projects to be funded, gender issues have to be well clearly spelled out. So the thing is, if it's all with the organization itself. If that organization believes that we must accommodate gender in this project, they will make sure that it's part of their policy. That's why the first point I talked about was about accommodating gender at policy level, developing it at strategy level, and in their plans and even in the budgets. If that organization had even budgeted that there must be training specifically tailored to accommodate gender, in that project, you can expect more positive impact than one which maybe was a top-down and did not even consult the community. So it all depends with the organization culture itself, who is bringing the project into the community. If the organization itself is well familiar and values the importance of accommodating or integrating the gender, it will work out much better than the one which doesn't. I don't know whether that answers your question.
I think it's very good. We have one more. We have a couple more questions. So we will go with, are we as a WASH E-Club planning on monitoring and assisting in repairs? Oh, that's, and I think as into our actual club. Last question, and then I think we'll have to start wrapping this up. Given the increasing challenges of living in very dry environments in the world, in the time that you've worked in these communities, do you see greater migrations of these populations into urban areas?
I think it depends. It depends with different countries. For example, countries like Malawi, Zambia, 85% of the people are in rural areas. But in some cities later, you know, I can understand there is quite a lot of migration into the cities. And yes, it is true. The issue of sanitation among the slums is also a big thing. Water in the slums is also a big thing. But in general, because most of the, like sub-Saharan African countries, not all, most of them depend on farming as their main economic good. And as a result, the farming is in the rural areas. So most of the people are in the rural areas as well, if we compare the ones who are in the cities. But I think it depends with country to country.
Wonderful. Okay. If there are any last questions in the chat room.
I have a comment. This is Bruce.
Please.
I think as far as this slide right here, how could this club do something? The Rotary International is requiring that clubs who are doing a water-related projects do a hydrologic study and submit a project as part of their proposal. And I think we are in a position as the E-Club to make specific recommendations through WASRAG, possibly to Rotary International, that those studies include this issue. And we could be very specific that, you know, the inclusion of women on a board, or the inclusion of gender, understanding the role of gender in selecting the site, and things of that nature. We could be in a position to make those suggestions so that clubs who are writing these proposals in the future would need to take that into account. So that kind of answers that, and we can work on this over a time period and see how that would develop. I think that'd be a really good role for our club.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a very good idea, because we could come up with a checklist, a sort of which the clubs should meet, maybe in terms of gender, what they should meet as a requirement for the funding for the Rotary funded WASH projects, which we can develop later.
And those are really still just being developed right now. So I think our timing is very good as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Are there any other comments or questions as we start to wrap up? No?
My last question was, what could each one of us do to have a gendered tailored WASH project, or WASH project? This I just want to learn from you as well. What do you think you would do as individuals?
Anybody?
Maybe we could make that one a homework assignment.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's in the next meeting. Yeah, that's fine.
I can certainly say that maybe not specific project examples, but certainly where I'm working at the moment, that's very much a theme constantly. So everything is very gender focused. So working with women from all throughout the world, and everything is through a gendered lens in many ways, in terms of all the classes. So we're constantly talking about you know, patriarchal systems and empowerment and education and power dynamics and things.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I agree. I mean, I think it is a case of looking at the practical needs that these projects are based around, and then always considering and factoring in the, you know, the deeper cultural complexities which you were getting at, which can make the implementation and the sustainability very, very difficult sometimes. Yeah, so definitely adding that into the framework, and also that presentation that we're going to give as well.
Okay. Oh, that sounds very good. That sounds great. Then if you have any, I would appreciate your comments about my presentation, because this is not the Bible, it's not a final version. I believe it can become better if people can comment about this, like based on your experience, Stephanie, to say, you know, you might think, oh, maybe that point could also be better in here. I would appreciate that, because in that way, I think it would be a bit more rational than the way it is. So please, your comments are welcome. And maybe even before we put the final thing on the, you know, on the website, we can add your comments, just to make sure it's comprehensive enough.
I think it's already very comprehensive, but I was just wondering if you do have so you've got the PowerPoint slides, but do you have a paper or a written sort of description of the initiative and the project and the challenges?
The what, sorry?
Do you have a paper, like a, I don't know, research paper on the project?
Not this one as such. This one, I just made these slides.
Okay.
There's no paper, but if you think we can write a paper about this, that would be good. We could write a paper together. That could be fine. I know I'm just writing a paper with another consultant here in UK, and we are focusing on we are focusing on WASH and the issues of genital mutilation. Right. So yeah. We want to look at that, but for this, we have not thought of a paper so far.
Okay. Yeah, no, I was just simply thinking of anything else that I could read about the project, because it is a very interesting one. But I will get back to you, Beatrice. I can just email you with any other thoughts that I've had.
Yeah, that would be great, Anita. Yep. Yeah.
Yep, I'll do that.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Nice.
Okay, I think that pretty much concludes our presentation and our first forum. If there's, there's a lot more questions.
There are.
I think, okay, well, she's asking, I think I saw the word perpetrator on one of your slides. Is the word, if that word is there, in future presentations, you might want to address this. In your context, what defines a perpetrator?
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's a good point, observation. Okay. Thank you for that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that pretty much concludes our presentation. Bruce, do you have anything that you would like to add, or anyone else?
No, I just thanks for everybody for organizing this, and I'm glad we got this started. Looking forward to more of them.
Yep, so we'll be sending a follow-up email with the link, I believe, to the recording, and we will continue to arrange these WASH and Women forums to host more collaboration.
Hey, thank you very much for organizing. It was very interesting.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all. Thank you again.